Check on this car. There's a lot going on out there. We got two different parades and stuff. But one of the reasons that, there's many stories about Bright. There's countless and countless stories. If you spend any amount of time around him, you got to have some Brightharp stories. If you don't have any Brightharp stories, you spend absolutely zero time around him. So, and you can't make it up. So one of the reasons I joined, Jalgar had a reputation, and it just what it was. It was the school to go to. Now, anybody that's trained with Bright, anybody that's trained under Bright knows Bright was as tough as they come. He was. I mean, those 32-round workouts, not a joke. Everybody remember the chalkboard we had in the school? You come in, we had the chalkboard right here underneath the phone. I walked into school one the first time I joined, and I started saying to him, I'm hearing this noise in the back. And I said, okay, well, somebody's on the bag. I looked at Bright. I was like, okay. And I saw he had 2 rows of numbers. 1 to 16, 17 to 32. And that's how many rounds he was going to do. By the time I got there, he had done 19 rounds. Each round was 3 minutes apiece. I've seen Bright crack off 32 rounds. And then who remembers the extended workout rounds? The marathon rounds, the 15-minute up, Jones? Yeah, them things. So as tough as Brightharp was, when he told me this story about him, Paul, and Wood, and unfortunately, for Wood left, I just was like, how tough is this school? He said he'd been in school about 3 years, and Paul and Wood were senior fight instructors, and both Paul and Wood, by the time they joined, I asked them a couple of years ago, by the time they actually got into Jalgar, both Paul and Wood had their 5th degree black belt from Simba Dojang, which is one of the oldest Taekwondo schools in the city. Then they came over and did Jalgar on top of that. So they were already dangerous, now they're going to be lethal. So keep that in mind. So Bryce said he walked in, he's been in school about 3-4 years, and Wood used to train, Paul used to train the marshals, remember Thurman and all those guys. And so they were working out with the marshals that day. So he turned to Bright, Paul said, hey Bright, you want some of this? Bright said, yeah, I'll take a piece. He said, okay, I'm gonna go a couple rounds of Wood, then you come on in. Now remember, we all know Bright, so I'm thinking, and this is my scene, I'm thinking, this is the toughest man I've seen in my life. So he said him and Paul, Wood and Paul were sparring. And back then, body shots were body shots. Body shots were almost full strength. Kicks, punches, didn't matter. So he said Wood hit Paul with this punch. But, and Paul went back like this, about 6 feet. And Paul said, Then Paul came back and hit Wood. Bah! He knocked Wood back about 6 feet. He said, okay. So they continued to bounce each other around the school, back and forth. Bright said he looks at this, right? He's sitting at the chair by the door. He said, I got up from that seat as quietly as I could, and I crept into the locker room as quietly as I could. He said, and I packed that bag. He said, and I got the hell out of that school. He said, I was not staying for that whooping. I'm not staying for that. When he saw that, because he thought he was pretty good, and he was pretty good. We all got good. But when he saw that level of sparring, he was like, no, I'm not ready for this. But that's how, and that shows you the toughness that Bright was. If he was worried about that, especially at that time, it had to be real. So that's one of the beauties of being in the Jalgar. It is real. It is absolutely real. The 2-man sets that you saw, dude, I don't care what anybody says. Outside of contemporary wushu, nobody in this town did 2-man sets better than Jalgar. Period. No one. We are the first school of DC, and we will remain the first school of DC. And we will keep the legacy of those around. Thank you much for your time.